Hey everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new video. I have a couple of projects to share with you today using new products from Simon Says Stamp's DieCember release, and I thought I'd make a card and a tag, and I also have a bonus tag at the end to share with you too. Today's video is also part of Simon Says Stamp's DieCember release blog hop. This is day 2 of the hop. If you missed out on day 1, you can check out the Simon Says Stamp blog for more information on the inspiration that was shared that day. But today, me and a few other designers are going to be sharing inspiration using this beautiful collection, and I thought I'd start first with this colorful card that I made with Tim Holtz's holiday stamps, the bottle brush trees, and I also used Simon Says Stamp's coordinating bottle brush tree die set that cuts out these stamps to create this wonderful Christmas card. So I have the stamp set here, which I like to store in Simon Says Stamp's storage envelopes. They're heavy duty and the perfect size for Tim Holtz's stamps. I also have the coordinating dies. I'm going to be stamping the bottle brush trees, a variety of them in multiple colors to create a rainbow. So I'm going to start first by stamping with rose and carnation ink. All of the inks that I'm using today are Simon Says Stamp's Pawsitively saturated inks. I love using these because they stamp so beautifully, and I want to create a two-toned effect on these trees. So I'm going to stamp first with one color, and then with the second color, I'll go in and stamp that along the bottom, feather it out with a blending brush, and then stamp that down over top of where we stamped the first color. And I'm going to repeat this for all of the colors that I'm using today. So I'm going to show each color on screen so that way you can see which colors I'm using. And I also have them linked below in the video description and on my blog. So if you want to see those colors in picture links, you can check it all out there. Each stamping is going to feature that two-toned effect, and I always take a blending brush and feather off that line between the two colors so that way it gives a nice soft transition. These inks overlap beautifully. They're meant to work together in a layering effect, and so when you want to use them like this to create a two-toned stamping color, they blend so nicely. I really love the teal colors. This is Tide Pool and Again, and these are just gorgeous. For the greens, I went with Celery and Perfection, a nice bright green, but you could swap that out for something darker such as Kale, Artichoke, or Cabbage, which are new colors from Simon Says Stamp's Positively Saturated line. I'm finishing things up with some purple, which includes Heather and Iris. So this will give me a really nice blue-violet purple on the end. So here are all my trees, a bright, happy rainbow. I love this. I'm going to take the coordinating dies now and start lining them up over top of my stamped images, and I will hold them down with some Simon Says Stamp very, very low tack tapes so that they don't shift while I do my die cutting. This way I have them perfectly lined up, and then I will be able to cut all the trees all at once for each of these sheets of paper. I did stamp on Simon Says Stamp 120-pound white cardstock, which is one of my favorite papers to use for stamping. I have all my trees, and we're going to make a background now for them to sit on. I'm going to use some marine ink. This is one of the colors that I did use for the trees, and I'm going to ink blend a little bit of that color around the edges just to create a soft light blue sky. I don't want this to be dark. I want this card to be very bright and happy. So kept a light color for the background, and then over top of that I'm going to apply some volume paste from Stamperia through the Simon Says Stamp Fallen Snow stencil. I did apply this with my palette knife and smoothed it out best I could, and then I'm going to carefully lift this off to reveal those beautiful snowy drops on top of our background. For my trees, I did decide to cut off the bases. I wanted them to be coming off of the bottom of the card, so they're not needed. So I'm going to trim all of those off and then start figuring out the placement for this card. So I'm going to start lining up each of my trees onto my project using foam tape. Some of the trees I used 1 layer of foam tape, and then others I used 2 layers just to get some additional depth. That way it gives the scene a little bit more of a realistic look. And I did end up making 2 of these cards. This is a really easy card to make, and I had a lot of fun stamping, so I thought I would make more than one. Once I have all of my trees arranged onto my card, then I can go ahead and work on matting this on top of some matte silver cardstock. I want a little bit of a shine here, so by having that matte silver cardstock showing around the edges of this panel, that's going to give me that shine, and it's not going to be distracting from the rest of the card. You could also cut the middle section out of this paper if you'd like. I didn't bother, but if you want to save the paper, definitely go ahead and cut that out. So my next step is to decorate these trees. They look great as is, but I love a tree with ornaments. So what I did was I pulled out some gems that I had in my stash These I believe are from Pretty Pink Posh, and I'm just going to glue them onto each of my trees. And I picked gems that would go with the color of the tree that it's sitting on. So yellow gems for the yellow tree, green for the green tree, purple for the purple tree, and so on and so forth. So that way it gives a very rainbow-like feel to this card, and it's also adding a ton of sparkle. So for a sentiment, I'm going to pull out this Festive print stamp set. I love this one. I used it to make some tags, which I'll link to in the top right corner for you to check out. But I'm going to go ahead and use that sentiment to put a greeting onto my card. I'm not going to use any of the imagery from that stamp set, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. So this piece sentiment I stamped onto some black cardstock, and I'll use some embossing powder in white to sprinkle over top of the embossing ink that we stamped the sentiment with. I'll use my heat tool to set this so that I get a really nice bright white greeting on top of this dark colored cardstock. And I did use my scissors to fussy cut the sentiment out so that way I could pop it up on top of my card panel using some thin 3D foam squares. And you can see for the card base, I've picked out some white cardstock. This card is a 5x7 card, so it's a nice big size. And I love those sparkly trees with the rainbow colors and the falling snow. It's just so pretty. So like I said, you could make a lot of these cards if you want to. Just go ahead and do all your stamping all at once, then do all your die cutting, do your stenciling, and just repeat everything in an assembly line style, and you could make more than one very quickly. I was able to make 2 in no time at all. Alright, so from snowy scenes to a snowy tag, I thought this tag was a fun way to be able to use some of the new dies in the DieCember release. So one of them is the Fretwork Snowflake, and oh my goodness, it's so pretty. I'm die cutting it from some glitter cardstock here. This is Simon Says Stamp white glitter cardstock. I have this nested tag from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it from white cardstock, and I'm also going to cut that snowflake into the tag. So that way I can have a window into this tag. And I do recommend you might want to cut 2 at a time, so that way you can go ahead and actually put this on the back side of the window so it'll clean everything up real nicely. But you could also skip it if you want to. So I'm going to use just the negative area of this tag. I'm going to pop out all these little pieces because we want the window portion of this tag, not any of these little elements, but you could save these for another project. So I'm going to set those aside, and now we have our tag here that we can start decorating. I'm going to start first by ink blending around the edges. I'm using some Tide Pool ink. I love this color. Like I said, I used it for the trees. It's a beauty, and it's one of my favorite teals. So I'm going to use that to add ink around the edges of my tag, bringing it into the middle and then leaving that white halo there so it looks like it's glowing. I then brought in a stencil set from Simon Says Stamp. This is one I designed for Simon a while back. It's called Layering Snowflakes, and it's really fun to use because you have these large snowflakes that you can stencil in one color, and then you have smaller ones that fit in between that you could stencil in another color, or you can swap it out for paste, which is what I'm going to do. So after I ink blended the larger snowflakes, then I brought in the smaller ones, and I'm going to nestle that in between, and I'm going to use some of this really cool Candy Pearl paste from Brutus Monroe. So this dries basically clear, a little bit, has a little iridescent look to it, but it has these beautiful flakes of iridescent that show up in between the paste. It's so pretty. I think this is a really interesting paste to use, and I can't wait to use it on something else. So it's used only in a small amount of areas here for that background, but it did add a nice bit of interest to it. So now I have some acetate here. This is Simon Says Stamp lightweight acetate. It die cuts beautifully. I'm going to die cut that same tag die that we used earlier, so that way I can have this be the glass, so to speak, for the window of my tag. So I'm going to put red line tape around the edges of this, and I'm going to then use that red line tape to adhere this to the back side of my window tag. This is going to give me a nice clear surface, which is where I'm going to be able to add my additional Fretwork snowflake embellishments inside of the window. So I used those glitter paper pieces that I had die cut. I popped up the larger piece with foam squares, and then I used some liquid glue to adhere the little piece in the middle. And so that acetate is serving not only as the space for these pieces to adhere to, but also is providing that beautiful window through the tag. So like I mentioned earlier, you might want to cut 2 of these snowflake window tags just so that way you can use the clean one to go ahead and put on the back side of your decorated tag, so that way you can hide the adhesive and everything's nice and tidy, and it's also giving you a great place to write on the back side. So I recommend die cutting 2 so you have that space there and it looks really clean now. So to decorate my tag further, I brought in this Florence Medallion. It's beautiful, and it also works with the Florence plate that's a separate die from Simon's DieCember release, but I thought this would be beautiful to put along the top of my tag, and it just so happens to have a nice hole in it that works perfectly with the hole of my tag. So my ribbon can still fit through there, but it gives a beautiful little embellishment to the top. I die cut that from some silver cardstock from Simon's Stamp, and then I'm going to thread my ribbon, which is just some teal ribbon that I had in my stash, through that hole and through the tag, so that way I have this really nice, pretty little finish along the top. I think that just looks so elegant on top of this tag. I always like adding a little greeting or a message on my tag, so I picked out this holiday typewriter stamp set from CZ Design, and off camera I heat embossed in silver one of the sentiments onto black cardstock. And I put that along the bottom of my tag. I added some of Simon's icy sequins around the tag and also a little gem in the middle of that snowflake just to add some extra sparkle. And that's going to do it for this frosty tag. The window is such a fun and unexpected element. I think it was worth the effort. You could totally skip it if you want to and just glue the snowflake straight onto the tag. But having that little see-through area, I think it's just a really fun way to be able to dress up a tag a little bit more. So I did promise I have a bonus tag. I didn't actually film myself when I made this tag, so I just wanted to share a still picture of it. But what I did was I used Tim Holtz's Jolly Holiday stamp set, and I stamped this Santa in Distress ink. I used Lost Shadow, and that way I could no-line watercolor over top with some bright Christmas colors. I used red for his suit, green for his gloves, and I put him on top of a tag that I decorated using some holiday backdrops, a couple of ephemera pieces. I added some stamping with some stars and a little candy cane along the right. And then I also finished it off with a greeting from Simon Says Stamp's Elegantly Modern Christmas hot foil plates. This pretty tag has such a nostalgic look and would look beautiful on top of a gift bag or a present. You could also tie this on top of some sweet treats that you make for somebody for the holidays. A lot of different things that I've shared today in this video. I hope they were inspiring to you. If you'd like to learn more about the DieCember release blog hop, please be sure to check out my blog. I have links below in the video description if you're watching this on YouTube, and if you're watching this on my blog, just scroll down to the bottom of the post and you'll find information about the blog hop. If you're interested in any of the supplies that I mentioned today, you can find those in those areas as well. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to get back to you as quickly as I can. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed, and I can't wait to come back to share more with you all. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.